Mr. Men Adventure Under the Sea. Little Miss Dotty had been to the shops. She had bought something, which is all quite normal, but what she had bought was far from normal. She had bought a submarine. And why had she bought a submarine? Well, that was the question Mr. Happy asked when he went round for tea. I don't know, admitted little Miss Dotty with a shrug of her shoulders. She lives in the middle of a wood, in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of Nonsense Land, where the grass is blue and the leaves are pink. It is a very long way from the sea, and she had bought a submarine. Dotty by name and Dotty by nature. We will have to take your submarine to Seatown, said Mr. Happy. And so they did. In Seatown, they met Little Miss Sunshine. She was very excited at the sight of the submarine. That's just what I need, she said. I'm organizing an underwater expedition to find the lost city of Atlantis. I'm always losing things, said Little Miss Dotty, but I have never lost a city. We will help you find it. They put together a crew and went to sea. Help! We're sinking! Cried Little Miss Dotty as the submarine dived under the waves. Mr. Happy explained how a submarine works. So, said Little Miss Dotty, which way to Atlantis? It's a lost city, said Little Miss Sunshine. And, said Little Miss Dotty. Well, it wouldn't be lost if I knew where it was, explained Little Miss Sunshine. Maybe we will find a mermaid, said Little Miss Dotty. Don't be silly, laughed Little Miss Sunshine. Mermaids aren't real. On their search to find Atlantis, they went swimming in a reef. All the brightly colored coral was very beautiful. It's so pretty. It's like an underwater garden, said Little Miss Fickle. Or maybe a shop full of sweets. Or maybe a colorful painting. Little Miss Fickle can never make up her mind. In amongst the coral were lots of different fish. There were big fish like Mr. Greedy. There were small fish like Little Miss Tiny. There were grumpy-looking fish like Mr. Grumpy. There were jellyfish like Mr. Jelly. There were skinny fish like Mr. Skinny. And there were spotty fish that Little Miss Dotty liked very much. What a lot of fish there were in the sea. That's an electric eel, pointed out Mr. Happy. Don't touch it, he cried. But it was too late. Poor Mr. Greedy had been zapped. Now I know what fried fish feels like, said Mr. Greedy shakily, once they had brought him safely back on board the submarine. Their search for Atlantis took them to the bottom of the ocean. The deeper the submarine dived, the darker it became, until it was pitch black on the ocean floor. But even this deep down, there were fish to find. Very strange-looking fish. They look like aliens from outer space, said Mr. Happy. The fish even had their own lights. They glowed in the dark. There was no sign of Atlantis in the depths of the ocean, so the submarine began to rise. Suddenly, a whale loomed up out of the murky water. A sleepy whale. The whale opened its mouth and yawned an enormous yawn, and swallowed the submarine in one enormous gulp. Oh, help! Squeaked Mr. Jelly. They were inside the whale. Oh, help! Shrieked Mr. Jelly, much louder this time. We've been swallowed by a whale. Oh my, oh gosh, we'll never get out. It's a calamity. How will we ever escape? But nobody in the submarine had an answer. Submarines are not something that whales normally eat, and it quite disagreed with this particular whale. The whale's stomach rumbled, an even bigger rumble than an empty Mr. Greedy tummy. The submarine had given the whale indigestion. The whale burped, an almighty great burp, a burp that echoed around the ocean. Burp! And, as if it had been fired from a cannon, the submarine shot right back out of the whale's mouth, which was very lucky, but that was not all. Because the whale had helped them in their search, the submarine now lay in the ruins of an ancient city that had been submerged beneath the sea. That's Atlantis, cried Little Miss Dotty. How on earth could you know that? Asked Little Miss Sunshine. Look, there's a sign, said Little Miss Dotty, pointing to a stone signpost, and carved in the stone was the word Atlantis. Oh, said Little Miss Sunshine. They found all sorts of things amongst the ruins. Little Miss Sunshine was very excited. There were statues, vases, coins, a sword, and even an ancient ship. It was a whole lost civilization. But Little Miss Tiny made the greatest discovery. She had found a mermaid. How extraordinary! Exclaimed Little Miss Sunshine when Little Miss Tiny showed her. Well, I never, cried Mr. Happy. I can't believe my eyes, declared Mr. Greedy. I told you we might see a mermaid, said Little Miss Dotty, and she had been right, which is something that does not happen very often to Little Miss Dotty. What a successful trip, declared Little Miss Sunshine. Yes, it was, agreed Mr. Happy, raising the periscope to see where they were. And there was Seatown. Once they had docked, they went into the Quayside Tavern and celebrated their success with fish and chips. So you discovered Atlantis and found a mermaid, said an old fisherman sitting beside the fire. That sounds like a very fishy tale.